Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, met with members of Jamaica's business community on Tuesday following threatened disintegration of trade relations between both countries. It was compared to a prey walking into a lion's den. The meeting between Dr. Keith Rowley and the members of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce and the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, PSOJ. Recently, Jamaica's business interests expressed displeasure at the trade imbalance which exists between Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. Some have even called for a reduction or a ban on the imports of goods from Trinidad and Tobago into Jamaica. Dr. Rowley was hosted at a luncheon by the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce on Tuesday, during which he faced 5 questions from Jamaica's business leaders. The first question sought details to the bilateral discussions on Monday about oil and its relationship to regional trade. Dr. Rowley says 2 things relating were brought up in the discussions, one being the peculiarity of the point systems governing the price of oil.
Energy is so central to Trinidad and Tobago that we won't capriciously enter into the arrangement that can be fundamentally deviant as an energy producer, because it does have some misunderstanding there. For example, what is not widely known even inside of Trinidad and Tobago is that we are an oil importer, and much of the oil that we handle is an imported product bought from outside on terms and conditions that could change by the hour. And then we refine that and simply take a margin on the refinery.
Another question surrounded the free movement of goods throughout the region. Dr. Rowley says what has been agreed by both governments is that free movement at this time is relative. Rowley argues that while Trinidad and Tobago may have a competitive advantage with energy, Jamaica has a competitive advantage with cheaper labor.
What we need to do, and these are the discussions we were having yesterday, is putting management arrangements in place which step by step would allow us to move towards the goal of free movement of people, but in the meantime allow easier movement of skilled labor or even some quantum of semi-skilled labor from where it resides to where it is required. And if we can put the management arrangement for that, then a number of birds can be killed with one stone, not the least of which is the whole question of security and opportunity. Because from time to time, different poles within the region will have attracting features or repelling features. And if we are committed to a regional unity of some kind, especially in market and economy, we have to be able to tolerate these stresses and strains.
The Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister was also asked to address the failure at decision-making at the CARICOM level. He notes that from his meeting with former Prime Minister Bruce Golding, who heads the CARICOM Review Commission, and other members of the Commission earlier Tuesday, came the suggestion for sanctions to address the body's failures.
At the level of CARICOM, some problems are identified, some solutions are identified, some solutions are accepted, and thus ended the lesson. So in reviewing CARICOM's effectiveness as a machinery for advancing our ambitions, it is coming home now closer and closer to a consensus that what needs to be done to kickstart the CARICOM promise is to carry out the decisions that we agreed that should be carried out. If we have agreed that these are the problems plaguing us, and these are the solutions out of those problems, and we've all signed on to the solutions, what should be dismissed? And again, this was raised by former Prime Minister Golding. Should there be a penalty for CARICOM states signing on to an agreement, the agreement being ratified to be implemented by a particular date, and on that date, one of the territories that sign on or territories that sign on to this can ignore that, or there not to be some consequence for that? And that is where the discussion is, and Trinidad and Tobago believe that it's a good place to start. And if we do start in that way, and we're not inventing any wheels here, because other arrangements around the world have responses to delinquency when decision-making is not followed through.
Head of the Jamaica Manufacturers Association, Metro Siaga, in thanking Prime Minister Rowley for taking the initiative to personally see to the calming of tensions between Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, questioned what can be done to ensure equity in trade throughout CARICOM.
When any of our people see a label that says made in Jamaica, made in Trinidad and Tobago, it must mean something to us and it must bring a sense of pride to us. And if we're competing, the competition must be a healthy one and one in which we feel that we all have a stake. Because if made in Jamaica is success in Jamaica, the same way made in Trinidad and Tobago or made in St. Lucia is a long way from made in China, made in Dominican. You know, we have to have a pride in what we're doing for ourselves, not only in our own island. Because if we only think that progress can come on our island alone, it could generate certain kinds of sentiments which are not in keeping with the goals we set ourselves. Because at the level of the Golden Committee and the meeting we had this morning, he raised with me, is it that we have set our standards too high? Is it that we are aiming to do too much, something that we know we can't attain? And if we fail to attain the heights we've set, is it that cynicism will set in and cause us to lose faith in our dream? It is my view that we have not set our standards too high. The goals may be far away, but insofar as there are steps towards that goal, those steps are progressive steps and we should make them. And I'm happy to hear that the Jamaica Manufacturers Association on this trip could say to us that we're all in this together.
Now, there has long been talks about the implementation of a regional investment body that can solicit investment for the entire CARICOM region, such as that which exists in the individual countries. Dr. Rowley was asked why it hasn't occurred to CARICOM that such an entity is needed in the immediate future. He noted that this is dependent on the individual countries and their willingness to participate in that implementation.
If we do a roll call now and identify all the things, including the ones that you just mentioned, we can very quickly, or in some reasonable time frame, decide with some alacrity how we are going to implement them if there is a desire to implement. And I'm optimistic that in the current climate, and I've taken this from my colleagues who I've met twice since I came in at Belize and in Georgetown, that there's a willingness to not just kick the can down the road, but to pick the can up on some of these issues and to get some decision making.
Dr. Rowley later met privately with William Mahfood, president of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Mahfood was one of a few persons who have remained vocal on the trade imbalance between Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. The details of that discussion have not yet been made public. And the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, was inducted into the Prime Minister's Park at his alma mater, the University of the West Indies, Mona, on Wednesday. The induction followed his courtesy calls on the Vice-Chancellor of the UWI, Sir Hilary Beckles, and a meeting with the executives of the university. However, while Dr. Rowley was inducted, Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness did not make the cut for induction. Vice-Chancellor of the UWI, Sir Hilary Beckles, opened his time at the podium by explaining why Prime Minister Rowley was inducted at this time.
Prime Minister Rowley has behaved in a manner perfectly consistent with the fine education he received at the Mona campus. Came here, departed this land with first-class honors, and in the midst of a Caribbean quarrel where two parts of the family were quarreling over this and that, he said, you know, I'm going to go up there and bring greetings to everyone. And he rose above it, came here to Jamaica, engaged the Jamaican people, engaged the Jamaican private sector and the state, and assured them that a family may very well have quarrels from time to time, but at the end of the day, we are an indivisible family. And if that isn't statesmanship, I don't know what is.
Sir Hilary lauded the efforts of Dr. Rowley and Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness for taking these steps to prevent a fallout in diplomatic relations. He says their statesmanship is a mark of exemplary leadership. Meanwhile, man of the hour, Dr. Keith Rowley, described his visit to Jamaica as a need to reconnect with his life at UWI Mona. He thanked UWI for the honor, which he says was a complete surprise made known to him on his arrival in Jamaica.
On behalf of the colleagues I work with now, including the minister in the Prime Minister's office who is still trying to matriculate into UWI. It's not too late. He can do an evening course or something. The Open University is there. I'll encourage him to do that so that he can be fully qualified. But on behalf of all these people who have done so much for us, and on behalf of all those people who are depending on us, who are now in the primary schools, the secondary schools, or even out of school, I say thank you. And thank you for keeping the dream alive. UWI is a star in the crown of the Caribbean nation, and I thank you for being part of it.